the compact car segment is seeing action early on this year. First, we saw Maruti Suzuki launch the Ignis, which drew a lot of attention with its quirky styling, both positive and negative. And now we're seeing Hyundai up the ante, giving their hot seller, the Grand i10, a refresh. Well, the Ignis would like to claim to be completely different from this by virtue of its crossover styling, but it does squarely fall into the price bracket of the Grand i10 and they're bound to be compared. So we thought we'd pit the two together, and of course we're taking our favorite Ignis, the petrol manual, and putting it against its competitor. Let's see which one comes out ahead. The Ignis certainly draws attention with its looks, and there are lovers and haters. But the fact of the matter is, it gets noticed either way. The front is smart with those upturned LED DRLs and the large grille that encapsulates the lights. The blackened A-pillar and alloy wheels add some attitude to the side. But this is the view that probably most people don't like. The chunky C-pillar with the shark grille like 3 stripes engraved, which Maruti like to call triad, are a bit too much. And the rear is reminiscent of a 70s car. The Grand i10, on the other hand, is replete with a current refresh. It gets a new reshaped grille and L-shaped fog lamp surrounds on the front bumper. The front bumper is not only home to the new LED DRLs, but as per Hyundai's claims, it also helps improve aerodynamics. The smart alloy wheels are new too, and completing the makeover is the revised rear bumper. In comparison, the Grand i10's design looks safe and conventional, but it's still a nicely styled car, and it's likewise on the inside. Now, the Hyundai Grand i10 may have the more conventionally styled dashboard and layout. Of course, the dual-tone coloring and contours add to its appeal. Still, it extends quite far into the cabin. The fact that the gear lever sits in the center of the console and quite high up makes it feel a lot more closed in than the Ignis does. Still, you do get everything that you want here, whether it's storage space, which is ample all around the cabin, the touchscreen infotainment system, and of course, it comes feature packed too. But what's really great on the Grand i10 is the quality and the fit and the finish. All the plastics feel rich, they feel premium, and they make you feel that you're sitting in a car a level above. It is definitely the more quirkily styled interior, that's for sure. You have a floating sort of infotainment system that's touchscreen. You have a rotary area here for the climate control with the toggle switches that work really well. You have storage space, cup holders, little extra storage for the phone, some storage in the doors, a glove box, and even a small slot just above that, although I don't know what it will hold. You pretty much have everything as far as features goes, but what I really like about this interior is the fact that this dash is very upright. It's quite narrow as well, doesn't extend deep into the cabin, and of course the white area that sort of makes it more spacious. It opens out room, and the front actually feels quite big and airy. Let's take a look at the spec comparison. As far as safety is concerned, Maruti are definitely the more generous ones, with dual airbags, anti-lock brakes and ISOFIX child seats mounts offered as standard across the range. Hyundai doesn't give similar flexibility to buyers. Base Grand i10s get a driver's side airbag, and mid-spec sports trim upwards, there's one for the front passenger too. But what's really disappointing is that ABS is reserved only for the top-spec Asta version of the car. The other features of note, like alloy wheels, daytime running lights, rear wipers and defogger, reverse sensors, tilt adjust for the steering and steering mounted audio controls are common to both. The Ignis and the Grand i10's touchscreen units come bundled with SatNav, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. But where the Maruti screen is better in terms of readability, the Hyundai's unit is more responsive to touch inputs. Both cars have similar boot capacity, but in the Grand i10, the wheels intrude into the well a little bit more than the Ignis, making the Ignis the more practical boot overall. Now, the front seat of the Ignis may be more comfortable as far as the seat cushioning goes, but the rear seat of the Grand i10 is actually the better one. It's got more under-thigh support, the recline angle is a little bit better, although you do sit a lot lower to the ground. Still, there is more space all around, whether we talk about legroom or even the width. The Grand i10 is also the only one to get a dedicated aircon vent at the rear, which is a boon in our climate. The Ignis, on the other hand, has a very upright backrest, and visibility for taller passengers isn't too good, with them having to crouch to get a view out of the front windscreen. Well, let's turn our attention to the spec sheet now to see what powers these two. Both cars have power plants with identical capacity and power. They come with 1.2-litre units that churn out 83 bhp. Now, while Maruti promises a 20.89 km per litre average, the Hyundai has also improved its efficiency and now promises 19.77 km per litre. But before we get into the performance, let's see how they feel from behind the wheel. Now, the first thing you notice when you get into the Ignis is that the ergonomics are so much better, especially the pedals. In the Grand i10, they're really high up. So it's a bit awkward, especially when you need to use them a lot in traffic conditions. Here in the Ignis, it's perfectly comfortable. It's easy to switch between the pedals. And the clutch is also nice and light and easy. The seats themselves are well cushioned and comfortable. The base is nice and wide. And in fact, it's actually the perfect length. Whereas in the Grand i10, I found it a little bit long, the squab. And everything else also falls to hand really easily. The gear lever falls to hand. Steering position is nice. So actually the Ignis feels a lot easier to drive and is the one that it's much quicker to get into a comfortable driving position. That's not to say that the Grand i10 is uncomfortable. It's just that the Ignis is easier to spend long hours in cutting through traffic. Well, one would think that the less frugal unit would actually feel better when you press the pedal. But out on the road, it's quite the reverse. This engine just breathes so easily. It has a nice strong mid-range, which is what makes it so easy to drive in our traffic conditions. You really don't need to use the gears too much at all. Just gentle dabs on the accelerator, draw responses. Every time you extend your right foot, you find that it gets going nicely and it feels actually quite peppy and lively. And the Ignis does feel like the lighter car. The more you extend your foot, the more the Ignis responds, and tucking in and out of traffic gaps or even overtakes when you're cruising comes so easily. The Ignis feels extremely nimble as well. The steering is light and easy, when you want to make a U-turn and when you want to nip in and out of those traffic gaps within the city. But then on the flip side, it really doesn't give you any kind of connect with the road at all. It just feels too light all the time. The steering on the Grand i10 definitely has more weight to it, and it gives you a far more connected feel to the road. At higher speeds, it makes you feel more stable, more planted, and it definitely gives you the better sense of security as well. The i10 feels the more planted and stable car of the two, especially as you go a little quicker. However, as far as performance goes, though it gets off the line nicely, power flattens out really quickly. And as you press down on the pedal harder to extract power, the revs rise, making it quite noisy too. Luckily, the Grand i10 is the better insulated of both the cars, so overall, it shuts out sounds better. The flatter power delivery in the Grand i10 also highlights the flaws in its gearbox. Now, you do have to work the gears a lot more in the Grand i10. And when you do, you realize that this gearbox is not as sort of smooth and slick as the Ignis. It feels a little bit notchier, but on its own, it's not too bad. It's still quite easy to use. Where the Grand i10 does score over the Ignis is in ride quality. The ride quality of the Grand i10 actually feels the better of the two, especially at low speeds. It's got that softer, more pliant edge that smooths out the bumps and potholes a lot better. As you pick up the pace, because it is softer sprung, there is a little bit more movement, but still overall, it is a good ride quality. The difference in the ride quality is not huge though. The Ignis does have the firmer ride, but it's not an uncomfortable one at any time, and really not a deal breaker. What does make or break a deal sometimes is price. So let's take a look at how much value both offer. it's a really closely fought battle between these two cars, with each one edging the other out in certain sections, and the Ignis does have its strength. It's got that really nice engine which is peppy, it's fun to drive and makes light of city conditions. Of course, it's got a couple of more features, and there's that quirkily style interior which is pretty interesting too. But when you want a car, you want everything that you can get in one package and you want it at value. And that's where the Grand i10 does really well. Whether we talk about the quality feel on the interiors, whether we talk about features, whether we talk about performance, whether we talk about comfort, whether we talk about space, it delivers everything in one package. And when you compare top end to top end spec, it also gives you better value. And that's why it's our winner.